Welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. Are you doing the best for your client to help them create their legacy? Are you creating a plan that goes far beyond finances to help people ensure that it becomes the driving force behind all decisions? On this podcast, hosts Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller will help you with growing your practice and your clients' peace of mind. Together, they bring the best and brightest minds to share with you how to help your clients develop their best legacy. And now, here are your hosts, Katie Beth and Stan.
Welcome to the next installment of Legacy Leaders Podcast. I'm Rod Hatley, and I have the privilege today to speak with Christine Fitzgerald, who is an attorney with the firm of Robberson Schroedter here in San Diego, California. And she focuses on complex commercial litigation and business bankruptcy with a focus on creditors' rights. Now, that's a mouthful. Christine, do you want to just take a moment and tell us what you really do?
Sure, Rod. That was a very great intro and generalization of what I do. With respect to the bankruptcy, right now, a lot of my practice is bankruptcy based, and it is if you are an individual or an entity and someone who owes you money files for bankruptcy, we represent your rights in connection with the bankruptcy. We do have a case where we represent a corporate Chapter 11 debtor and are assisting them in reorganizing. And the other big part of my practice is, as you said, commercial and business litigation. This usually deals with companies or individuals fighting over contracts, or there's a disagreement about a deal that's gone south, or misappropriation of trade secrets. I currently have a big case that deals with that issue right now. So it's kind of some of those more complex issues. And we use the term complex litigation because there are some nuanced issues that are involved, or it can be very large litigation that has a lot of parties.
Okay. Let's see. So how did you, what was it that led you to law school and to becoming an attorney? Can you share that with the listeners?
Absolutely. So when I went to high school and we take all those aptitude tests, and I tested really high on mathematics, chemistry, and like a pre-legal area. And when I went to undergrad, I thought, well, I could go be an engineer, a chemical engineer, because a chemist didn't really make sense and I didn't want to be a mathematician, or I could go into pre-law. And pre-law does not really give you, in my opinion, a great base if you decide not to be a lawyer when you're done with your undergraduate. So I chose chemical engineering. I did a couple internships at DuPont while I was an undergrad, decided it was not a good fit for me, and then decided to pivot and go to law school.
Okay. And let's see, and other than that, was there any other influence possibly that drove you to considering law school and becoming an attorney?
Not really. I mean, I don't have it there. I'm the first lawyer in my family.
Okay.
So there's no other lawyers in the family. I'm someone who's not afraid of confrontation and kind of digging in, asking those hard questions. I tend to be pretty analytical, hence the engineering background. And, I'm a firm believer in karma and justice. So I think it kind of fit with those other attributes and strengths that I have.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that. Can you tell us, it's a two-part question. What do you enjoy most and what do you enjoy least about what you do as an attorney?
So I enjoy helping my clients. Obviously, that is something that I honestly gain massive satisfaction from when you're able to achieve a really great result for the client and they're happy, you're happy, and that's the end game and the end goal. I also tend to enjoy the intellectual side of things. I like digging in and research, finding nuanced issues, writing like a great brief, something that I really take pride in the work product. And something else I enjoy, and I maybe I shouldn't say this, but I enjoy the fight, if you will. I like getting into a deposition. I like getting into a cross-examination. I think that stuff's fun, which is why I always say, I think being a lawyer is something that really matches with my personality. Things I enjoy least about the business of being a lawyer, partly the business aspect of it. I've never really wanted to run my own business. So the idea of, collecting bills, paying rent, paying employees, that stresses me out. And that just stresses me out. I like just being a lawyer. And then the other thing that I definitely enjoy least is when you've got somebody on the other side who's being really difficult just to be difficult. And for the most part, professionals, we can agree to disagree. We've got our facts, we've got the law, and we can, figure it out and let the judge decide. When somebody's just kind of going out of their way to be unprofessional and just, it makes things really, really difficult, and you kind of lose that aspect where you enjoy being a lawyer.
Um, let's see. So let's transition for a moment. What's an ideal client for you? I mean, that's really a sweet spot. So when this kind of a client walks into your office with a problem, this is the right kind of client for you to be able to go to work and ideally get a terrific result for them. Can you share that with us?
Sure. And I don't want to say there's like an ideal or a right type of client. Usually clients that we're able to jump in and help a little bit faster are clients who generally have all their facts and books and records and documents together. It helps assist us to like jump in and get going a little bit faster. I think for us, having a client that is going to communicate well and be responsive to our requests for additional information and kind of work with us to get to the bottom of things. I think generally speaking, just with the type of practice area that I tend to be in, financial institutions tend to be great clients where you can build a long-term relationship with them where, it's just not a one and off. You might have something where you've got multiple cases together, in which case you can build on that historical knowledge that you have with them.
Okay. Let's see, talk for a minute. And actually, I want to ask you to share a story or two with us if you can.
Sure.
Obviously, preserving client confidences. Can you share us, relate us to an instance where you were able to obtain a really great result for a client, and then maybe on the other side of it, one that wasn't, just things didn't go as you would expect it, and possibly because the client would not cooperate or would not take your excellent advice, et cetera. Can you share those with us possibly?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I came to Robberson Schroedter and did focus on commercial litigation and bankruptcy, I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office and I was an AUSA. And I practiced civil defense with them. And we had this case that was a really, really tough case. And we knew we had kind of what we saw as the attorneys as clear liability. And we were just, I don't want to say fighting, but we had a disagreement with the other side over damages. Okay. And, the plaintiff in that instance was a personal injury case. He suffered a traumatic brain injury. And it was a very, very rough facts. And, we like the plaintiff, and we think in that case, this is actually one where we got to the right result, where we put enough money on the table to settle the case, where we felt that it was a way to kind of right the wrong that had happened. It took a while to get there, which, as that tends to happen, but we felt good at the end of the day that we had done right by the fact that, one, we'd owned up to the fact that as the government, we had made a mistake or an error. And then two, the amount of the settlement was something that, based off of the information our experts have provided us, we felt was a fair and reasonable settlement for him.
Okay, terrific. Yeah, it's nice when it comes off that way. You feel badly that someone was injured, but this is a way to try to make them as whole as possible under the circumstances with the information that was provided. And then on the flip side of that, the sort of the downside, I suppose you could say, a case that just despite your best efforts, nothing worked out well for the client. Anything that come to mind?
I've got a couple of those. I used to do some employment. You shouldn't say that like that, but I used to do employment defense litigation. And I don't know if you've heard of the wage and hour class actions, but those types of lawsuits tend to be very technical. Yeah. So for example, if an employer leaves off a date or a little piece of information on a pay stub with an employee, right, an employee can file a class action and ask for hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages, even though no one's really been damaged. And it's a technicality, and in my opinion, the way the labor code is written, it's very harsh on employers, especially when otherwise the employee is very happy, the employer is very happy. And, there's just one little ticky-tacky thing that no one's really been, I want to say they haven't been harmed because technically it's not in compliance, so they want to fix that. But no one's lost any money. Their paychecks are otherwise correct. Okay. They've been paid everything that they're owed, and everyone's happy working with each other. And I've had a couple of clients where, I think they really do right by their employees, and none of the employees that we talk to have any issues. And it's just these little ticky-tacky things. And then the employer has to get hit with a settlement that's, $400,000, $500,000 because they missed a little thing, and it goes up exponentially based on the number of employees that you have. But, in those instances, I feel bad for the client, but under the law as written, that's kind of where those cases tend to end up.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, and is that something you still do today? Do you provide that kind of?
I do a little. It's not a focus, but I still do some employment defense litigation and advice and counsel. I would say it makes up a very small amount of my practice area right now, but we take in those cases as appropriate.
Okay. And is that something that you would offer in terms of helping an employer understand their rights and responsibilities and what they should be doing in terms of, crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's to comply with the labor code.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something we could absolutely assist an employer with.
Okay. Let's talk for a moment about, you probably heard the phrase trusted advisor, and it means different things to different people. I always look at it as, if I have done a great job for my clients as an estate planning attorney, then my expectation would be that they can feel free to call me. And even if it's not something related to the estate plan or the asset protection plan that we've done for them, but it might be, hey, we've got a relative got into trouble, went down to Mexico, is in jail, can you help? Do you know somebody? And so, yeah, I have a Rolodex of people who could definitely help in a situation like that. What does that mean to you, if you can ruminate on it for just a moment? I know I'm probably hitting you out of the blue with this, but being a trusted advisor, what does it really mean for you?
So, well, real quick, most of my best referrals come from clients. So I take that as the biggest compliment when I've had a client and they refer somebody else to me, because obviously that means they're happy with the work we've done. And, they're recommending me for a friend or a relative, which I think is one of the biggest compliments to be paid. But for me, trusted advisor is a little different. I look at my role truly as that as an advisor. So the client's going to come to you with, I have these issues. And as an advisor, I feel like my job as the attorney is to give them their options and say, here is option 1, 2, and 3. Here are the pros and cons, and provide them with a recommendation of this is the course I would take if I were in your shoes, or this is the one I recommend for you. And then let them make a decision. It's really helping them make an informed decision so that they feel good about it and they understand any risks there may be with that decision they're making.
And you just mentioned that existing clients can be a great referral source. Let's talk generally speaking. Who or what is a good referral source for you? I know institutions possibly could be, but what kinds of, do other attorneys possibly refer to you, as well as are there institutions that possibly refer to you?
Yep, I would say primarily most of the referrals that we get are from prior clients.
Okay.
Or from other attorneys, which again is another compliment that somebody else in the profession would refer a client over.
Sure. Okay. And then let's see. I'm just trying to think, is there anything else I wanted to follow up on that about? So the good referral sources can be other clients. It can be other attorneys that you've interacted with. Have you ever had a referral come in from maybe somebody that you opposed on the other side of a case? I think that would be just an incredible compliment, that they thought so highly of you, even though they were opposing you, that they said, you know what, you really need to go see Christine Fitzgerald about this.
I did it was a couple of years ago, but yeah, before I went to work at the U.S. Attorney's Office. So yes, I have gotten a referral from opposing counsel, which I agree is a huge compliment. And hopefully that's a testament to how, we're practicing law here in San Diego, being professionals and, good attorneys for our clients.
And may I ask how long you were with the U.S. Attorney's Office here in San Diego?
Yeah, I was with them for about, I think now, I want to say it was actually a short amount of time. It was about 1.5 years.
Oh, okay.
So very short amount of time. I left working at a big firm doing employment defense work, and then went to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and then got this amazing opportunity to come at Robberson Schroedter.
Terrific. Yeah, I think any time you get experience like that, I'm former Navy JAG, so had 7 years on active duty, and I spent 2 years as a criminal defense attorney. And I will agree with you that when I had a good case and a good opponent, I don't know that there was any more fun you could have practicing law. But trial work's extremely, and I don't know if you would agree with this, I found it really stressful. Because you've got to prep, you've got to get up for it, and and as a criminal defense attorney, I was usually in a reactive mode. So having that conversation with your client to help him or her understand, well, they probably got you dead to rights. I looked at the NCIS criminal investigative report, and I can try to, I will hold the government's feet to the fire, but I think at the end of the day, you're probably going to the brick. So, let's figure out what we can do about this, and what do you want to see come out of this? And so, yeah, I would agree that, trial work can be really incredible, but it can also be really draining too. So you feel the same way about that, or?
I agree. I love trial, especially when you have the right amount of time to prep for it and really build for it. I'm somebody who I probably would like to be in trial maybe once a year. I don't know if I could handle multiple trials, 3 or 4 a year over the course of several years. I think that I agree with you. That would, I think, wear me down a little bit and be stressful. But I think trial itself, and I shouldn't, I use the word fun, but I do find it fun. I find it fun to dig into things, really prep, really prepare your witnesses, and all of that, I think, is what I enjoy being an attorney.
Yeah, I will say this: when you got to make an argument to the jury, as opposed to maybe just a bench trial with the judge, you talk to the jury, you're trying to convince them of the rightness of your case or the correctness of your position or whatever. And so you basically, it's like theater. And I guess that may be one of the reasons why courtroom dramas are such a hit, because it's, you're trying to make that appeal to the jury, get them over to your side if you can. And so I think that's always been interesting. But there's the human toll of, oh my goodness, and it's so draining. I always found it draining because I might have a couple, 3 a week, and you can just imagine the stress level just goes through the roof. But when an aircraft carrier would come back into San Francisco Bay, I was at one time stationed at Treasure Island in San Francisco. They drop off about 5,000 problems at our doorstep, and so we've got to process these military justice cases and try to get these things scheduled for trial and then prep for trial. And sometimes you just do the best you can with what you're given, and usually you're not given very much to work with, so you just make the best argument that you can. Sometimes tongue in cheek and crossing your fingers, hoping that something comes out of it that's valuable for your client. Let's see. Obviously, with your background, you've got the ability to analyze, et cetera. Is there anything that any advice that you have, especially if it's on the institutional side, like a bank or a lending institution or whatever? Do you get involved with maybe helping them, have best practices so that before they have to retain your services to go after somebody, that they've got the right kind of protocols and processes in place?
That is actually something I do not do. We don't do a lot of compliance work or transactional work. We are really kind of litigators. So you call us, unfortunately, after the problem's arisen and you can't resolve it. But yeah, that's where most of my practice area is.
Okay. Let's see. So before we bring this to a close, is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you would like to talk about, or is there maybe you wanted to amplify something that you mentioned previously in light of anything we've talked about up to this point?
Nothing specific, Rod. I had a quick question for you. Sorry to throw you kind of a curveball, but you do estate planning, and I'll say that both of my parents unfortunately have passed. And when my mom passed, there was nothing in place, which wasn't a big deal because my dad was there, and as the surviving spouse, there was a lot of things that he could just step into and deal with. There were some little things that we wish we had done better. And my dad thought he'd seen an estate attorney put together a will and everything was taken care of. And when he passed, we found out that there were a lot of things that we shoulda, coulda, woulda done better. And I understand that part of your practice is estate planning. And I was wondering, generally, what advice do you give to people? I feel like people are always reluctant to talk about their mortality and make these plans. Do you have any advice? I wish there's something I could have told my parents to get them to look at this a little bit sooner, whether it was to talk to an accountant, a CPA, put assets in trusts.
Sure.
What advice do you have?
Well, I come at it from a different perspective. I went through a 7-year probate after my father passed. My dad had been ill with leukemia, and he had been a successful businessman, but the challenge was because he was ill, he was making at that point in his life emotional choices, and you can understand why. But I knew enough about estate planning as a Navy JAG to be dangerous, but I knew at least enough to say, Dad, we've got to do more planning. He had various business interests, etc. Long story short, he passed. I took 2 weeks emergency leave. I went back to my hometown of Memphis, Tennessee. Week number 1, we got him buried. Week number 2, we opened up a probate that turned into a 7-year ordeal. That's not what Dad would have wanted, I know for a fact, but because he could not undertake to do more planning, that was the practical result. I always recommend to folks, look, we all know that we're going to pass, okay? But what if I'll pick on myself? I become incapacitated mentally. At some point, someone's going to need my signature, and the way they'll get it is they'll put me in front of the probate court judge downtown and be appointed my conservator, which is a guardian for a grown person. So there's every good reason to do the planning ahead of time because none of us knows what's going to happen. In fact, it doesn't even have to be your fault. I was rear-ended on the highway back in early November. I was slowing down in traffic and the car behind me just slammed into me at full force. The car was totaled, et cetera, and I was able to limp away with abrasions and whiplash. But stuff happens and nobody knows when your time is up. So all the more reason, and I think any responsible, parent or married couple would say, yeah, because we know we're going to go at some point, and especially if you've got minor kids or even if you've got adult kids. Money doesn't come with instructions. So why don't we have a conversation about how we can structure things so that whatever you leave to your family will be left to them in such a way that they can always have access to it, they can even control it, but they can't lose it if they get sued or have a divorcing spouse. So these are all the good reasons to do the planning because none of us knows what the future brings. So the best way to hedge against that is to get a plan in place and then keep it updated. And I like to see my clients, if I can, about every 3 years, have them come back in. Let's have a conversation. How are things going? The laws may have changed. Our personal circumstances may have changed. And so now it's a conversation about how we might set things up for the future. And we also like to incorporate asset protection features into the planning so that when a beneficiary receives an inheritance from mom and dad, it's protected from later lawsuits or divorcing spouses. I call those people creditors and predators. And the idea is just to make sure that we've done the proper planning and just have a plan in place. And actually, interestingly, you didn't know you were bringing this up, but the August is National Make a Will Month, and so it's just a reminder to folks: please get out ahead of this. Get something done so that you make it easier for the people who come behind you to make those important decisions, and they don't have to second guess themselves. And sometimes these are gut-wrenching decisions. What should we do? Well, you've already thought through that, and you're leaving them a set of instructions of what to do next. So it's a great question. Did I answer what you wanted? Did I answer it the way you wanted it, or is there anything more I can elaborate on?
No, I think you did. I think that what you said and makes complete sense. And I think you kind of gave an approach to hopefully open that door if someone needs to talk to a loved one or a friend about estate planning and making sure everything that they have is taken care of the way they want to when they're not here anymore, they're not able to.
And I think that's really what it's all about, is just, avoiding the probate is, I'll give you the cynic's definition of probate. Probate is a lawsuit you filed against yourself with your money for the benefit of your creditors. So I think it makes sense to just get out ahead of this, make this a non-issue. And then that way you live your life. And I know in my dad's case, certainly because he was ill, there was this fear that, well, if I do the planning, I'll die that much more quickly. It was totally irrational, but it's very real and you have to deal with that. And so sometimes having that conversation with a parent or an elderly loved one can be really challenging. And there is a way to approach it. We obviously can't get into it here, but there is a way to do that in a way that's magnificent, and it doesn't feel like you're, invading their privacy, but it's a way to do so in a magnificent, loving way. Hey, I care about you. I want to make sure that you're taken care of should something happen. I mean, we know we'll all pass, but what if you're incapacitated mentally? So that's and I think it's important to at least have the conversation, or at least start the conversation. And I hope that makes sense for folks. Christine, how can people get in touch with you based on anything we've talked about today? Somebody says, I really could benefit from having a conversation with Christine. How can they get in touch with you?
The best way to reach me is my email, and that is Christine@thersfirm.com. And I'll spell that out. It's CHRISTINE@thersfirm.com. And our website is thersfirm.com.
And RS is in Romeo Sierra?
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Unless there's anything else, Christine, it's been a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for sharing the time. I'm Rod Hatley with the Legacy Leaders Podcast, interviewing Christine Fitzgerald of the RS firm, Robberson Schroedter. And Christine, thank you so much for sharing the time today. It was a real pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you, Rod. It was a pleasure meeting you as well.
You've been listening to the Legacy Leaders Podcast with Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller. For more information on them and the show, please visit pinnaclelegacylaw.com. If you like what you've learned today, do share the program with your friends and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.